evening. Secret that we need to know, and it doesn't need to be a secret, but unfortunately it is one. But it's simple, so listen closely. Things are not going to always go your way. Please be prepared for that. You're not going to get what you want. Everything isn't going to be hunky-dory. Things are not going to be the way you want them to be. Things are not going to happen the way you want them to happen. Again, things just aren't going to be well sometimes. It's not going to be what you want. Things are going to be hard. So we need to know this. It's nothing new. It's been this way from the beginning. After the fall of man, everything changed. And at the fall of man, again, the curse came from the ground. Even the thorns and thistles and death. I mean, everything changed. And it's not going to work our way from the sweat of our brow, from the labors we got to do. Again, things aren't going to be our way, so we need to be prepared for it. As I always share with us, only thing important is our relationship with Christ. How we handle the things that don't go our way is a reflection of our relationship with Christ. In 1 Corinthians chapter 10, we're going to start this chapter off. It's the Old Testament lessons of Israel's sins. Things that not always go Israel's way. The nation of Israel was set free. God had Moses go to Pharaoh and said, "Let my people go." And from the very beginning, from the very first time, when Moses goes to Pharaoh and says, "Hey, God sent me here, and I'm getting the children of Israel where we need to go," and from the very beginning, the message, the first thing that Moses told Pharaoh was, "Let my people go, that they may do what? Serve me." It wasn't because things were so rough for the house of Israel. It wasn't because they had to work too hard. It wasn't because that they were slaves and that they were serving these infidels, but they were serving, Pharaoh, who thought himself a god. He was God on earth. He had put himself in position as God, as Pharaoh. He was the God on earth. It wasn't because they were serving him. It wasn't because they had it so rough. It wasn't because they were being mistreated. It wasn't because that their life wasn't luxurious. God wanted the children of Israel to be set free from the bondage of Egypt so they could go serve him. The bondage that they were in prevented them from serving God. The bondage of sin we find ourselves in prevents us from serving God. God does not set us free from the bondage of sin so that we can have a luxurious, comfortable, nice life and have everything our way. We're set free from the bondage of sin so that we can serve God. So realize things are not going to be going our way. And as they were set free, and as the hand of God led them out through the plagues, and as the hand of God led them out through the pillar of fire, through the cloud above, through the protection, through the parting of the Red Sea, through the giving of manna, through the quail, through the water from the rock, through their shoes not wearing out, through all the things that God led them through and blessed them through, it's still, everything didn't go their way. And they didn't get to go into the promised land, all but two of them, because of their, what? Disputings, their unbelief, and their murmurings. Is what we're going to be. They murmured. They were complaining because it wasn't going their way. Let's read a little bit here of the examples we find about the lessons from Israel. Verse 1, 1 Corinthians 10. "Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant, how that all the fathers were under the cloud, and all passed through the sea, and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and did all eat the same spiritual meat, did all drink the same spiritual drink. For they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. But with many of them God was not well pleased, for they were overthrown in the wilderness." Why were they overthrown? Because they were being set free to go serve God, and they were murmuring because things wasn't going their way. They wasn't grateful for what God had done for them. They wanted more and more and more. So here, as many of them, God was not well pleased and were overthrown in the wilderness. Now, verse 6, these things are examples to the intent we should not lust after evil things as they also lusted. Neither be ye idolaters, as were some of them, as it is written, that people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. Neither let us commit fornication, as some of them committed, and fell in one day 23,000. Neither let us tempt Christ, as some of them also tempted, and are destroyed of serpents. These examples of what not to do, we can read through here, and just in case you're getting your thumbs ready to stick in behind your suspenders, and you're fixing to stretch them out, and you're fixing to feel good, and you're fixing to boast of, you're right, Brother Jared, I would never commit fornication. That's just inexcusable. Would never do that. Just in case you think, Jared, I would never be an adulterer. I'm not going to serve no strange God. I'm not going to bow down to no graven image. I'm not going to put nothing between me and God. I'm not going to realize covetousness is adultery. But I'm content with what I have, Brother Jared. I'm content, so I'm not going to be an adulterer. And all these things we look at, verse 10, neither murmur ye, as some of them also murmured, and were destroyed of the destroyer. Murmuring is a very hurtful, a very dangerous, a big problem if you're a murmurer. If you're not happy with the situation you're in, especially when it's your fault, again, take it. Don't murmur about it. Children of Israel murmured at Moses. They murmured about God. They murmured, as we have the example, how many things did they murmur about? Or can you tell me something they did not murmur about? We have a lot of recordings in the scriptures of what they murmured about. That they brought us out here to die. You brought us out here to this. We're scared about that. We're tired of this food falling from heaven that God's given us. We're tired of this bread. We're tired of this quail. We're tired of this. We're walking in it. Nothing was going their way. When did God remove the pillar of fire and cloud? If you read through the whole history, they were in the presence of the visible presence of God and murmuring about how He was taking care of them. They were a couple of times, a number of times. They complained. They murmured. They had problems with how God was taking care of them. They murmured, and they were destroyed of the destroyer. So today we serve the same God. He is not well pleased. Remember, that's the word we've read above. He was not. Verse 5, with many of them, God was not well pleased. God is not well pleased with murmuring. He doesn't like it. The destroyer, He will send the destroyer. He does not like murmuring and complaining. And you talk about murmuring. You know, we understand murmuring, the under the breath murmuring. I can remember getting in trouble so many times for walking away murmuring, mumbling, murmuring, mumbling. I complained and mumbled under my breath because I knew better than to let Mom and Dad hear what I said. But they heard me mumble, and I got in trouble. Now my kids walk away mumbling, and there's something about how many of you have heard your child turn and walk away mumbling at what you said? And does that send a shiver through you? Does that not just have, when you've said something, the child walks away mumbling, and you don't know what they said, but you don't care what they said? The fact that they were saying it under the breath, and they knew better than to say it out loud, they knew it shouldn't have been said. There's something about that little shiver, anger thing that just goes through my body. It doesn't set well. I am not well pleased with mumblings under the breath about something I've said to my child. And God is not well pleased with the mumblings that I do under my breath about the situation God has me in, about the situation that I have put myself in, about the way that God has chosen to make a way to escape. We read this often. God will not allow you to be tempted above that you're able, but with all temptation to make a way to escape that you may be able to bear it. Amen? Have you ever mumbled at the way God chose to Saved you out of something? You ever mumbled at the lesson God told you? You ever prayed for patience? You ever prayed for wisdom? You ever prayed for God to help you in a situation, and when God sends His help, you complain about it? No, not me. Children of Israel did. Children of Israel were praying he'd be let out of bondage. He sent Moses, and when Moses first showed up, from the time Moses first showed up, they strove against him. You know, you come to get us, you this, it was always a problem. We murmur. We mumble at the situation we find ourselves in. And I realize when we put ourselves in them the majority of the time, and God is trying to save us from ourselves, and we're murmuring, and we're mumbling, and we're complaining, and we're discontent, and we're unsatisfied, and we're everything other than the grateful child of God we should be. God, verse 10, neither murmur ye, as some of them also murmured and were destroyed of the destroyer. Now all these things happen, verse 11, unto them for in samples, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. Wherefore let him that thinketh he stand take heed lest he fall. If you're sitting there, I don't mumble, I know better than mumbling, then consider the latter portion, because we all have mumbled at some time to some degree, I believe. Because we're human flesh. It's something that we're fleshly can come into. Careful, you think heed. You think you're going to stand. You're going to fall. I heard a sermon on the radio yesterday as I was driving about humbleness. And the speaker opened it up and he said, if any of you think that you are humble, you're the ones that need this sermon. The moment that you think you're humble is the moment you become unhumble. The moment that you think that you can do your meek is the moment that you're haughty now. You think, again, you can't, if you're humble, you don't notice. Murmurings, be careful. You say, I don't murmur. Sometimes we're blind to what we do. Sometimes we're deaf to our own mouths. We don't hear the extent of murmuring that we do. You ever talk to someone and after they had spent 30 minutes telling you about the whole neighbor's going news, then they say, I hate gossipers. And I go, what have you been doing? I hate gossipers. I hate busybodies. I hate people that just always tell them, talk what you've been doing for the last 30 minutes, but yet you hate people that do it, huh? Because we don't consider ourselves as gossipers. We don't consider ourselves as busybodies. Well, a murmurer does not consider himself a murmurer. So evaluate, examine, and consider, and think about this, and examine. Be sure that you are not murmuring. Because God is not well pleased with it. Everything is not going to go your way. You're going to be disappointed. You're going to have things that will make you angry in the flesh. Things are not going to be you want them to be. Don't murmur about it. Just go to God about it. In the book of Psalm 144, I read this from time to time to us because this is the topic that I do remind myself often, because that's what I find myself doing way too often. And I find myself doing just as I just shared with us. I find myself complaining about everybody else's complaining. And then what good does that do? When I'm murmuring and complaining and grumbling because everybody else is always mumbling and grumbling and complaining, maybe if I'd set forth an example of how not to do it, maybe they could stop doing it. But as long as I'm chiming in with them and I'm just as negative and complaining, as long as I'm just as discontent, as long as I'm mumbling about the way things are going, instead of praying about the way things are going, instead of asking God, instead of thanking God for helping me with it, because as bad as things are, they could be worse. Because you could be trying to do it without God, couldn't you? That turns something easy, hard, way quick, don't it? Without God, nothing is possible. With God, everything is possible. So again, be careful how much you complain. But in Psalm 144, and let's just read this whole psalm. I read the latter couple verses often. It's only 15 verses, so let's read the whole psalm. Blessed be the Lord my strength, which teacheth my hands to war, and my fingers to fight. My goodness, and my fortress, my high tower, and my deliverer, my shield, and he in whom I trust, who subdueth my people under me. For what is man, that thou takest knowledge of him, or the Son of Man, that thou mayest account of him? Man is like to vanity, his days are as a shadow that passeth away. But thy heavens, O Lord, and bow thy heavens, O Lord, and come down, touch the mountains, and they shall smoke. Cast forth lightning, and scatter them. Shoot out thine arrows, and destroy them. Send thine hand from above, rid me, and deliver me out of great waters, from the hand of strange children, whose mouth speaketh vanities, and their right hand is the right hand of falsehood. I will sing a new song unto thee, O God, upon a psaltery and an instrument of 10 strings, will I sing praises unto thee. It is he that giveth salvation unto kings, who delivereth David his servant from the hurtful sword. Rid me and deliver me from the hand of strange children, whose mouth speaketh vanity, and their right hand is the right hand of falsehood. That our sons may be as plants grown up in their youth, that our daughters may be as cornerstones, polished after the similitude of a palace. That our garners may be full, affording all manner of store, that our sheep may bring forth thousands and 10,000s in our streets, that our oxen may be strong to labor, that there be no breaking in nor going out, that there be no coming, planning in our streets. No complaining, I can't read, excuse me. There be no complaining in our streets. Happy is the people that is in such a case, yea, happy is that people whose God is the Lord. Ironically, as I read that, I misread the point in reading the whole psalm. But that there be no complaining in our streets. The quickest way that I can stop complaining in our streets is for me to shut my mouth. Amen? It's okay to agree with that. I won't be offended. Because it's true. As long as you consider it back to yourself as well. I cannot control how negative you are, but I can control how positive I can be as I focus upon God. I can control the complaining that I do. And I can set forth the example of not murmuring about the situation that I am, because no matter how much I complain about the situation I'm in, God is in it with me if I let Him. God is there to help me if I let Him. God is there to guide me if I let Him. And sometimes I'm in the situation I'm in because I didn't consult God. I did it my way. Complaining is not good. Murmuring, we've read already in 1 Corinthians 10, God is not well pleased. God is not well pleased with our conversations sometimes, and we spend so much worrying and so much negative, and we're complaining and murmuring, and we're distraught. What do we truly have to be upset about? We've got Christ. If the only thing important is our relationship with Christ, and the only one that can affect my relationship with Christ is me, everything else is in the flesh. And the little secret I've told us is not going to go your way. Just expect it. It's going. The good times that we have, the pleasurable, fun, comfortable, enjoyable times that we have in the flesh are perishable. Because something's going to happen. It's not going to stay your way. It's not going, and the big secret with this is it doesn't need to go my way. Because my way is not God's way. My flesh, there is a way that seemeth right to man, but the end thereof is death. My flesh, God's ways are above my ways. God's thoughts are above my thoughts. As long as I'm allowing Christ to influence me and reflect through me, then I have godly thoughts. But my flesh that starts murmuring, what did Christ complain about? When Christ was in the flesh, what did He complain about? When taxes came due, He didn't have taxes. But His disciples complained about it. He solved the problem. Go fish. Get it. He was going to solve the problem. He was hungry when there was a bunch of people sitting around to be fed. He knew they needed to be fed, but the disciples complained. They didn't beat Him to it. He wasn't going to complain. He just was going to solve the problem as it came up. Going to take care of it according to His will. We don't have examples of Christ complaining. So wherefore does our complaining come in at? When you're mumbling and complaining and murmuring and you're discouraged and distraught and you're unhappy and you're snippy and you're snappy and our flesh is being seen, where's Christ at? He's knocking on our heart trying to say, hey, remember me? That's not what I'm asking you to say. It's not what I'm wanting to do. You're not setting forth me right now. Again, there is a position, there is a time, verse 14. Our oxen may be strong in labor, that they're, breaking in and going out, but that there be no complaining in our streets. We can't control what goes on in the world, in the country, in the county, in the community, but we can control what goes on in our home and inside this church. So let's be sure that we're not complaining, we're not murmuring, we're not mumbling. Be aware, God is not well pleased. Go to James 5. James 5. Verse 7. Be patient, therefore, brethren, and realize how many times our murmuring, our complaining is just because we're not patient enough for it to happen. We're not being patient enough because God is not working in our time frame. So the very first thing to come to, once you acknowledge you have a struggle with murmuring, with complaining, a negative tone about you, that when you realize you need to work on that, patience is the first thing to work on. Because patience, when you're patient, you're not going to be complaining as much because you're just giving more time. You're not going to be mumbling and murmuring when you're just being patient. So be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husband waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, hath long patience for it, till it receive the early and latter rain. Be ye also patient, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. Patient, patient, patient. 3 times in 2 verses, just to get to verse 9. Grudge not one against another, brethren, lest ye be condemned. Behold, the judge stands before the door. What's wrong with being condemned for grudging one against another? Because God is not well pleased with mumbling, with murmuring, with complaining, with grudging. Grudge not one against another. Don't mumble and moan and groan and complain and be negative. You're going to be condemned when you do. Philippians 2. Verse 12. Philippians 2 and verse 12. Wherefore, my beloved, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God that worketh in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure. Do all things without murmuring and disputings, that ye may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom ye shine as lights in the world, holding forth the word of life, that I may rejoice in the Christ, that I may have not run in vain, neither labored in vain. Yea, and if I be offered upon the sacrifice and service of your faith, I joy and rejoice with you all. For the same cause also do ye joy and rejoice with me. But in verse 14, do all things without murmuring and disputings, that you may be blameless. Before that it said, for it is God which worketh in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure. I mean, God's not proud that I know more about the Bible than everybody else. I mean, God's not pleased the fact that I live a better, more righteous life than everybody around me. I mean, God's not pleased that I am so holy. You can throw all of it away when you start murmuring about something else. God wants you to grow and be mature and be the example. But a little bit of murmuring, a little bit of negative conversation can overshadow a whole lot of other things. That is an influence of Christ in us, is when we can hold our tongues and be patient. When we can see the silver lining, when we can hold our tongue, when we can just be quiet and not join in, when we can not murmur. Remember, God is not well pleased with our murmuring. So we're going to close in Numbers, chapter 11, and verse 1. Things was not easy. Things aren't easy today, but they were easier than they've been for generations before us. Easier than there was in most of our lives prior to now. But the children of Israel, they did have some hardships. They didn't have, the nice buildings we have, the nice cars we have, the nice clothes we have, and again, the health care that we have, we complain about. We have so much, and we complain about what we have so much. But in just verse 1 of Numbers 11, I ask you to read the chapter just tonight, tomorrow, in your home studies. I trust you do. But in verse 1 it says this, and when the people complained, what's the next 4 words? It displeased the Lord. When the people complained, it displeased the Lord. And the Lord heard it, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed them that were in the uttermost parts of the camp. When the people complained, it displeased the Lord, and the Lord heard it. There's a psalm, that is a song that we sing sometimes of, this poor man cried, the Lord heard him, and he saved him out of his trouble. We love that song, right? This poor man cried, the Lord heard him. We like that. God hears more than our cries, amen? And when the people complained, it displeased the Lord, and the Lord heard it. He hears our complaints just as easily as he hears our cries. But he hears our prayers, and he hears our praises. So what do you want God hearing? He's going to hear whatever we do, amen? And the prayer of the saints go up before him as incense. And he rejoices and is comforted. Again, the prayers go up before God, and he enjoys them. It says the sweet smelling savor incense for him. But the complaints go up before him, and it displeases him. God is not well pleased with our living. As we prepare for a verse of a song this evening, I will boldly tell you, if you tell me you don't ever murmur, you're a liar. We all murmur. Now, some of you may murmur once in a blue moon. Some, like me, murmur once in a blue moon. I don't murmur. But, we all struggle with it. So let's let God hear our prayers, not our complaints. You stand and sing one number.
Number 333. 333.